Hi, welcome to another edition of the Family Renewal Podcast. I'm Israel Wayne, and I'm delighted to have one of my friends on the podcast today that you are going to enjoy getting to know. Angela Odell is an author. She is specifically the author of some of the best-selling homeschooling curriculum in the nation right now. It is a curriculum program that has taken America by storm, and I'm grateful and excited to be able to have her on the podcast to let her talk about this with you today. So, Angela, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Israel. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so let's go back a little bit in time, and let's talk about the days before you were an author and before you were publishing curriculum. Before that time, you were a homeschooling mom. And I'm assuming that that's where some of the motivation to eventually develop curriculum came from. Were you finding that you were frustrated with what you were using and created something for your own home context, or did the idea to write curriculum come about much later than that?
Well, I'd been homeschooling for about 10 years when I began with the whole journey. And let me just tell you, Israel, this was not something that prior to that I would have ever dreamed of doing. Just simply because I was a very, very busy homeschool mom with 4 kids, all at different levels. And the daily juggling of it was, I went through all the same things that all other moms go through, the whole self-doubt and trying to find that perfect curriculum and all of that. But it was something that God just really dropped in my lap. He really didn't ask my permission. He just opened the doors and said, this is what I want you to do. And he had brought me up to a place in my life where I was finally willing to just go, okay, I'm going to do what you want me to do. It may not make sense. It may not look pretty at the beginning, but I'm going to obey you because I have learned that in obedience is the greatest blessing. So that's really where it all started. But yes, I had been homeschooling, like I said, 10 years or so, and I had just been struggling with finding something that would work for my kids. And I have a child who suffered some brain damage after he got some shots when he was 22 months old, and the brain damage caused some issues that some of the issues he grew in and out of, others remained. And those were the things that I was dealing with, that I was not able to find the tools that would work for this particular child. So I ended up doing a lot of research and study in the areas of brain development and brain trauma and all of those things. And I spent a lot of years doing that because I was told that this child would never learn to read. And of course, I took that as a personal challenge and said, yes, they're going to learn to read. So it took us a long time, but we broke through, we got him reading, and it just, it lit the fire in me to help others. And you know a little bit of my own story, Israel, but my own past, I had a lot of trauma from childhood. And so this dealing with my own child that had the physical, the physical brain issues, I'm sorry, and my own dealing with my past, it really became the place of, I really can't think of another word but passion, as in addressing the much needed change in the curriculum world. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because there's a lot of good curriculum on the market. There has always been a lot of good curriculum on the market, but I was finding that there were curriculums that were hailed as being wonderful, but that did not work real well in the homeschool setting. It didn't encourage the individual parent as they were trying to teach their children. So that's really where all mine came from, and it's nothing glamorous, nothing wonderful. A lot of years of research, a lot of years of learning, a lot of years of writing, and God has brought it to the point where it is actually to the place where other people are benefiting from it now. So, but yes, it was a long process, and it's kind of funny because I don't tell many people this. Hang on, I'm going to drink some water. But during those years I was homeschooling, I was also working on a degree of my own, and I thought I wanted a teaching degree. As I was discovering the culturally accepted educational model, and in a minute I'm going to show you, I actually made some slides that I'm going to actually work through with you, just so that that you are understanding, and whoever's watching this video is understanding. The model of education in this country, and really in most of the civilized world, is it's very damaging. It's very damaging to the child, and it's very damaging to the parent who is trying to use that model in their homeschool. So over the years, I have, with all the studying that I have done on the brain and all of the developmental studies and all of those things that I have actually worked through certification in, I have discovered the reason why the culturally accepted model of education is it just does not work. So if you don't mind, Israel, I'm going to share
Let's jump into that. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm going to share that right now.
You have to remember there are two different formats in which the podcast is being played. One is our YouTube channel, where people actually get to watch the slides. And if you're listening to the audio version, maybe you want to pick up on the YouTube version later. But a lot of people listen to the podcast just on audio in their cars or their homes on their MP3 players or their smartphones or whatever. So some people will not be able to see the slides, so we'll have to make sure that we communicate with them the content, so that the folks who aren't actually able to visibly look at it still understand the material. But yeah, let's dive right into that.
Absolutely.
So we'll transfer over here to the presentation slides so that people who are watching the video will be able to follow along. And we're loading a page here that says model versus method. And so I'm curious to see what Angela has to tell us about what she's learned about the current model and why it doesn't work with most students.
Okay, so yes, I'm going to explain the difference. The first thing I'm going to explain is the difference between a model and a method. A lot of people don't really understand the difference between those two. I know I did not. And to me, I thought they were pretty much interchangeable. But the more I studied, the more I actually worked towards my teaching degree, and the more I really detested what I was learning, the more I realized that this was the underlying question. What is the difference between a model and a method? So I'm going to push this into full screen. Here we go. Okay, so an educational model is everything that makes up the essence of what education is. It's the definition of success that determines the desired outcome for that education, and it is the set of goals and objectives for that outcome. So in essence, it's everything that makes up what education is. It is the what and the why of the outcome, and it is the ideals and the worldview that fuel the drive towards that outcome. Now, Israel, that is extremely important, that last one. It's the ideals and the worldview. Okay, and I want you to think for a minute, when you think of model, the word model, what comes to mind would be either like a runway model or a model home that a carpenter or a construction company would build to show their potential customers what they are capable of. That model home may be set up so that potential customers can walk through. They can see the craftsmanship that goes into the house. They can see that what kind of windows are available. They may even have different types of windows in the house so that the customers may be able to see, this is the kind of window that I want in my house. And this is what this company can offer me. And you can look up at the ceiling and you can see the types of ceilings. You can see the roofing material. You can see the flooring. You can see how the rooms are laid out. Now that's the kind of model I want you to kind of keep in mind. That's, if you apply that to the educational world, it is what you are trying to achieve. It is the finished product, okay? So that is the model. The difference between the model and the method is that the method is the tools or the set of tools that is used to accomplish the goals and the objectives that are set by the model, okay? So the method fits inside the model. It is.
Can I jump in with something real quick?
Sure.
So what I was thinking of here is when I wrote my book, Education, Does God Have an Opinion? When I'm looking at your differentiation between model and method, in that book, I was creating more of a template. I was more describing a model of education than a prescribed method, because I realized that people may take all kinds of different approaches to transferring a biblical worldview to their children. They may use different types of curriculum or curriculum approaches or teaching methodologies. So just as I'm internalizing this myself, I'm thinking really that book presents an educational model rather than an educational method.
Right, absolutely. And by the way, that is an awesome book. And I have given away, yes, yet again, I have given away my last copy. I have bought and given away, I probably, at least a dozen of those books.
Oh,
I need to get a case.
Thank you for that.
Oh, so yes, and so the method is the tool. And I'm always telling people, don't get stuck in a certain method. Okay, there are many, many different types of tools that you can use to build a house. You wouldn't use the same type of tool to install a window as you would flooring. Okay, you may use some of them. There may be some crossover, but there are very specialized tools for both parts of the building.
Yes, that's good.
So the method is it's also daily activities that we employ to reach those goals and objectives that have been set by the model. So with method, it's the daily life stuff, okay, that we're using to reach our goals set by the model. So our current culturally accepted model of education was born over 200 years ago, and the intellectual culture of the Enlightenment and the economic culture of the Industrial Revolution. I know that's a mouthful, but if you know anything about history, go back in time and think about this. We're talking about the time period. If you're, a U.S. citizen, you're familiar with our history. This is the time period where we were setting forth the Declaration of Independence, and we were deciding that we were going to become an independent country. So it was during that time period that this model was born. And at that point in time, the idea of public education was a revolutionary idea. I mean, this just was not done before. At that point in time, and it just as a point of interest, this time period was, there were many different classes. There were very distinct classes in culture around the world. In cultures around the world, there was there were the upper class, there were the lower class, and there was the slave class. There were all of these different classes that were just separate, very, very separate. So the idea that children from every walk of life, every class, could actually have an education that was free to them, that was revolutionary. And a lot of people did not think that it was going to work. And a lot of people did not believe that the lower class children deserved this type of education. So it was a huge, huge deal for this type of model to be set forth. So that's where the model came from. And quite honestly, from a Christian point of view, from a biblical worldview, this is a faulty model, and it was faulty right from the start. Has it gotten worse? Yes, but it was not rooted in the right place because it was based in the Enlightenment philosophy and the fundamentally humanistic teachings of that time. That's what the drive was. Okay, it put value on the human mind instead of God and His Word. Okay, to be educated, you had to understand the great classics, and it was very, very humanistic in its point, in its delivery, and in its desired outcome. Its goal was to create useful cogs for the industry-focused culture, and it was at that point where the educational model literally separated the smart from the non-smart. Okay, nowadays we call that white collar versus blue collar. Okay, so if you are a white collar, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're an accountant, you're one of those people who are highly educated and sit behind a desk and take care of other people's problems. If you're a blue collar, you work in a trade, you do the manual labor. And honestly, it's kind of interesting. In the last 15 years or so, there's become this huge need for trade, and in the trade labor. So there's a huge need for plumbers and electricians and all of that. But this whole thing has come from the non-smart and the smart. Okay. So the method's also faulty. The students were lined up in rows and taught to respond to bells and clocks and whistles in preparation for their industrial future. Students were educated in batches. They're still educated in batches. The most important thing about them is their date of manufacture. It doesn't matter what the individual in that group is, it's the group that is addressed. Students are taught to fill in the blanks and made to believe that there is only one correct answer to any problem. It teaches children to turn their mind off and do what they're told. Students were and still are tested by standardized tests that measure them against all the other students in their batch, or against that mystical and mythical average. Don't even get me going on that average. That's a whole entire other book. And this is the cultural norm that we have in so many cases accepted as the way to school our own children. And because most of us were schooled in that type of situation, that's what we operate from. Now, you and I both did not grow up in the public school, so we have an advantage in that way. But even for us in our 40s who have gone through different types of schooling, it's very interesting how we have even been affected by this. It affects our mindsets, and it makes it very difficult to break away from that because it's the cultural norm. Okay. I like to say I write everything from the biblical worldview, and I use the Hebrew model of education. What does that mean? Well, if you're familiar at all with the Shema, you are familiar with the Hebrew model of education. It's very simple. It's in Deuteronomy, and many homeschoolers know these verses, and they take these very literally, as they should. But I don't know if they realize the power of this section of verses. Yes, it's an Old Testament section of verses. Yes, it was aimed at the Israelites, the Hebrews in the Old Testament, but these have been repeated in the New Testament, so therefore we can apply them to our own lives. Jesus himself has said these, set forth, this is the most important commandment. And what I like to point out to people is that these verses not only tell us what the model is, it also gives us the method. Okay, so verses 4 through 6 are the model. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Sounds like a model for me, doesn't it to you?
Absolutely.
So that's what our model is. That is what our goal is. Now, number 7 through 9, this is the method. How are we going to do this? Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your forehead. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. Now, I don't believe that we're literally supposed to tie these on our kids or write them on our houses, but this is it's an example of how intently we are supposed to be doing this. This is supposed to be done in an intentional way. Okay, so I wrote down some thoughts about this that I wanted to make sure that I covered, because I can tend to ramble and get carried away. But I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this because this is the end. Here we go. So where the world teaches that it's all about us, right? And the world teaches that it's that the end goal is to gain knowledge for knowledge's sake. That's what the world teaches. The Word teaches that it's all about Him. The biblical model holds knowing and loving God as the goal. And we can do this by teaching every subject through the lens of the truth with the goal of glorifying God. So that really, in essence, is my underlying reason for writing. Is God has done amazing things in my life. And He has showed me how to use the pain and the grief of my own past actually as I really don't even know how to put it into words, but it is the fire. Sure. That gets my passion going for reaching into children's lives and telling them the truth and showing them the truth about who God really is. Because if they can get a glimpse of who He is in everything that they're learning in math and in history and in science and in writing, if they can understand that all of these subjects that we call subjects that we feel like we need to master, they're not subjects, they're literally part of His character. Mm-hmm. And if they can see Him in everything that they're doing, they are going to learn to love Him. And that has been my prayer for my kids since the day they were born is, God, I want my kids to love You. I want them to love You with everything that they have, everything. And when they do that, when they can do that, everything else in their life will fall into place. And I believe that. And it's the whole seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness and all these things. What are all of those things? It's all of the rest of everything in life. Everything else will be added to it. Absolutely. So that is my goal in writing. And my ultimate goal in writing and creating educational materials is to give the parents the tools to be able to do that. Things that will reach into the parents' hearts and encourage them so that they can in turn encourage their kids.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the model. Let's dive in our closing moments here. Let's dive into the method a little bit. And let's talk about the resources that you've created. The first resources that I became familiar with from you was, and when I pronounce any of the names wrong or get the details wrong, feel free to correct me. But your math curriculum is called
Math Lessons for Living
Math
Education.
Lessons for a Living Education.
Yes.
And that program sometimes is nicknamed by its users as Math Without Tears, because it really helps a lot of students who struggle with math, who feel like they're not good at math, who many times just that's a real sore spot for a lot of homeschooling families, is trying to get their children engaged in math. And that curriculum, I am published by Master Books, who also has published your curriculum. They publish my books and they publish your curriculum because I don't write curriculum. But at any rate, we go to a lot of conferences, and we work in tandem sometimes with our publisher, Master Books. And so I get to talk to people who come up to the booth and engage with them as they describe their experience with the curriculum, and hear from them. And so many people have said that your curriculum was so helpful in helping, particularly on the math side, helping the students to be able to just overcome their phobia and to be able to find math that's accessible to them, that they can do it, they understand it, they get it. The mothers are happy because they're not crying anymore. The students aren't crying anymore. So it really is their best-selling curriculum, the elementary math. And you just added level 1, right? So we now have 1 through 6.
We actually just added level K.
Level K, okay.
Yes.
I'm behind the times. And then the teacher companion, describe that quickly.
Well, it's just kind of because I know the math series is a very different approach to math. And if you want, I can explain how it's different. But it is a very different approach. And a lot of people don't understand exactly where it's coming from. They know it works, but it's so different. Like like I said, it's totally opposite of what the culturally accepted educational model is. It just doesn't fit that. Yeah. And it's not supposed to fit it. But it's very difficult for some people to wrap their minds around it, because it's just very, very different, and it's unfamiliar. So what I did is I gave a lot of tips. I addressed a lot of what, like Randy calls, friction points. I gave tips on how to do memory work and how to do right brain flashcards and the importance of oral narration. And I put every recipe in the entire series in one place in there. So there's just a lot of very helpful tips. And as a veteran homeschooler, we're finishing up our 21st year of homeschooling. So I'm like, I've learned a few things the hard way. So I want to help these moms to feel encouraged, and I want them to know that God has called them to do this, and He will equip them. And if I can help in that, that's what I want to do. And so that's what that book really is. And I really appreciate Master Books allowing me to just put my heart into it. And they're very brave, Israel. They're very, very brave.
They really are.
Because I am very different. And my stuff is very different than the usual. And they're very brave to invest in that and to take it up and believe in that cause. And I've loved watching that happen. So that's what the teaching companion is.
Well, because you are a homeschooler and you're writing curriculum for homeschoolers, most of the major curriculum publishers in the homeschool marketplace developed it for the classroom, Christian school classrooms mostly, but it's designed for a classroom. So there's a lot of repetition that in some cases is needless, because you're having to keep a student there in class for an hour. So you got to give them a lot of busy work just to keep them, keep them in their seat. And you're writing material that moves a lot faster. You cover a concept. It has a certain level of mastery to it, but then you move on to another subject. And so you don't just do what we call drill and kill, where you're just, spending needless hours going over and over with repetition, the same material that sometimes frustrates a child. So that's the curriculum that a lot of people would know best from you is the math curriculum, but you've also written America's Story, which is American history, and World Story, which is world history. And I'll just throw this in parenthetically. I think on a previous podcast, Brooke and I were talking about how to teach multiple children at once. And what we found works really well with your history curriculum, because we use some of your materials in our own home with our own children. what we find particularly in teaching history is that we group teach it. So
Right.
we will have probably 3 students. Now, we're a little different than some families in that we have 10 children from the age of 20 down to 16 months. So we have a lot of children in a kind of short space. So when I say that we have like 3 students doing workbooks to the same textbook, people may go, well, wait, how does that work? Now, they're not all the same grade, but the thing I love about your curriculum is that you don't write it on a grade basis per se. It's a whole nother podcast I need to do sometime about my aversion to grades, but you write it on a level basis because it's information that if you don't know the information, it doesn't matter what grade you could be. You could be grade 18. And if you don't know who the signers of the Declaration of Independence were, it just doesn't matter. You need to know the material. So what we do is we take students that are within an age range, and so we'll say maybe 4th to 6th grade or whatever the category would be, and we'll have them. My wife reads it aloud. This is what I'm getting at. She'll read aloud the textbook, and then they go through and answer the questions in the workbook. But we also have the little ones there, and they can be sitting on the floor. The toddlers can be playing with Legos and whatever, but they're sitting in there. And so everybody gets something out of it. The 4-year-old, the 6-year-old, they just enjoy hearing the story. The toddler can be doing his own thing, but he's with the family, so he's content because everybody's around him and he can go show them Legos or whatever. And so I find that it is the kind of curriculum that blends itself well to independent study for the parents who are like, I just want to give my child the textbook. I just want to give them the workbook. The math is like that. The history is like that. I'm telling everybody about your curriculum. I should shut up and let you talk about it. But I'm just telling people what we do. And so it's great if you just want to give it to your child and let them do it. But it's also great if you want to group teach. And we find that economically, that's a really good way to go for us because we're buying one textbook. And so we get them each their own workbooks, but the workbooks are so inexpensive, especially for master books. And so that's how we prefer to do it. I don't know that there's a right way. Obviously, if you only have one student, it's a wonderful curriculum to just say, here's your textbook, here's your workbook, and the lesson plans are all laid out. You can't possibly misunderstand how you're supposed to do your lessons. The student can go through and check off each day what they're supposed to do. But we really like to just your approach to providential history, how you talk about that history really is the story of God and what he's done in the past. And we like that you draw out some aspects of history that are often overlooked, that you really describe the culture and what the culture was like at these different times of history. You don't just give facts and dates, but you really help the student to understand the mindset and the mentality and the worldview that was behind it. Kind of a little bit what you were doing there with describing the model and method for us and kind of talking about how this way of thinking came out of the Enlightenment era and out of the Industrial Revolution and how the school system was patterned to try to create workers for the factories and so on. That's the kind of stuff that students get in your history curriculum. So anyway, we really want to highly recommend Angela's materials. You can get her books on masterbooks.com. There are also free PDF downloads that you can download if you want to kind of get a preview of what the curriculum looks like, if you want to get a feel of it before you buy it. Each one of her books has a free PDF download on masterbooks.com. And then there are tests that they can take online to find out where their child fits, right? Because they're not grades per se, they're
Right.
levels of mastery or levels of information that the student may or may not know yet. You may have a child who is in 2nd grade who can do level 3, or a child who's in 3rd grade who can do level 2.
Right.
How do they find out where they fit with placement tests? How does that work?
Well, for the math, the placement tests are really more readiness tests. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have an 8-year-old who has done kindergarten and 1st grade already and another curriculum. So you're looking through the book 2 and you're thinking, well, I think they probably already know most of this. So there are 2 things to keep in mind. Math lessons is a mastery and spiral based curriculum, okay? So where many other curriculums teach the child the formula and to fill in the blank and it keeps it on the page. That's just, this is math. Math lessons actually expects the child to understand it and to be able to explain it and show it while they're doing it. Now that can seem a little bit interesting to some people who have not ever done that. So the readiness test shows the parent, okay, my child can do this on a piece of paper, but they don't really understand what they're doing. And I've seen many, many times where a child has done kindergarten, first grade, whatever, in another curriculum where they're actually going back to book one and doing it more quickly, but also getting those concepts cemented.
Absolutely.
So,
And that's not failure, by the way, for a
what was
student.
that?
And that's not failure, by the way, for the
No,
homeschooling parents
absolutely
who are
not.
thinking, my child has finished first grade in public school, and now I feel like I need to have them do level one. That doesn't mean your child is a failure. It means
No,
that there are gaps. It means that there are things they need to review, or that they need the comprehension, because all they
right,
got was the formula. They
right.
never got the comprehension or the critical thinking that was required to know what that represented or why that works. And so
Right.
going back and doing those levels again, well, not again, but doing those levels where maybe you think my child should be beyond this, that's not failure. It's just
No,
making sure that you're eliminating any potential gaps that are there. And if they know 60% of it, and there's 40% that they don't know, they're just going to cruise through it. So, it's not like your child's going to labor on it all year. It's not like level
no.
one's going to take them the whole year to do. They'll probably breeze through it in 2 months, and then you just
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and buy both level one and level two, and then you start
Right.
them out on level two. So that's what we do with our students who need to go back and have some review, and it works really well.
Right.
I'm
And it's
gonna
also it's really important to understand that the test for two in this scenario, the test for book two, don't look at that and think, okay, well, this is what's taught into that. Those things that are in the readiness test for book two are what the child should know already to be successful in that book. In other words, those are the things that were taught in book one. So if they can do two and they know all of it, then they are ready for book two. They're
Yeah.
not ready for book three, they're ready for book two.
Yes.
So a lot of times that can be a little confusing, but that's the way we decided to set it up, so that the student can actually see those are the things that I need to know to be ready for this level. And math lessons is, like you said, it's skill level. It's not grade level, because grades are arbitrary, and I have looked at so many curriculums where this is grade one in this curriculum, and this is grade one in this curriculum, and they're like, there's nothing. And
Correct.
I'm like, what? Who decided it was grade one?
Correct.
So
Correct.
I don't do grades. I do skill levels. I do age appropriate, developmental appropriate. That's what I'm
Love
looking
it.
for.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to have to try to close this, because obviously you've written so much, and there's so much that we'd love to cover. Maybe we'll have you back on a future podcast, but we want people to be able to connect with you in every relevant way. They can buy your curriculum at masterbooks.com. They can connect with a community of people who are using your curriculum at the Moms of Master Books Facebook group. And that's a great place to go and ask questions. If you're using the curriculum and you have a question, it's almost like an online tech support community where people who use the curriculum will go on and say, here's how we do it. This is what we
Mm-hmm.
found to be effective. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but I'll just go ahead and do it anyway. And if you get really caught in a pinch and the community or the moderators of the group are not able to answer it, Angela is actually a part of that group, and so there is the luxury. Don't abuse it, but you can tag her in a comment, and I've seen her go in there and answer a question very directly. And so I know they can have access to you that way through
Yes.
the Moms of Master Books Facebook group. What are some other ways that people can get in touch with you if they want you to come speak at their conference, or they want to learn more about what you do? Where else can they connect with you online?
Well, I have a personal website. It's angelaodell.com. It's pretty easy to remember. There's a contact form on there. And also just, if there is someone who wants me to come to a conference or whatever, you can also contact through Master Books. It's a good place to go through there. So
Excellent.
yeah, and I've done both. I've gone as myself and I've gone for Master Books. So
And I think one thing that's kind of coming out with this whole COVID-19 crisis is that it really makes sense for some venues to simply invite those of us that are speakers to come and talk to your group via Zoom, honestly, because I've had groups that call me from Nevada. And they're like, we've got 10 families in Reno or someplace, and would you come out and speak to our 10 families? And there's cost involved in that, and airplane tickets and accommodations and just time away from my family and all of that. And I think for a lot of groups like that, we would love to be able to connect with you. But I think that us taking an hour and doing a live Q&A, for example, with your group via Zoom, boy, those are things that I think just make a lot of sense, and give us the ability to connect with you wherever you may be, even internationally, that we can travel to the Philippines, or we can travel to England, or wherever, Germany even, places where people have questions. We can do that via this kind of technology. And so I think Angela would be open to that too, if there was a homeschool support group, even that's a long way away, and you go, well, yeah, we'd love to have Angela come speak to our group in San Francisco, but we don't have the budget to pay for her to come out. Talk to Master Books, see if you can link up a Zoom meeting or something. And I'm sure she would be glad to just, take a half hour or an hour or something and talk to your group. And Angela, we appreciate what you do. We're big fans of your work. And I am grateful that your materials have found the audience that they deserve, because the homeschooling moms that are using the curriculum are finding that it really works for them. And there are programs that people have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in market research and trying to make sure that it's meeting all of the Common Core standards and all of that kind of thing. And parents use it with their kids and they hate it. And the experiential reality of your curriculum is that parents love it and the students love it, and it really works. And so we just encourage everybody to check out your website, angelaodell.com, check out masterbooks.com. And then just any final words of encouragement for parents who feel like maybe they're defeated and discouraged and not sure that either they can homeschool their children or they can keep homeschooling. You've been there. You've been a parent. You've had these students with real struggles. I'm sure you've had days where you say, I'm not cut out for this. This is not working for me. It's not working for my child. I'm ruining my child. What do you say to those parents?
Oh, I've been there. I've so been there. My biggest word of advice would be stay plugged in. John 15. Don't try to produce fruit on your own. You can't. Stay plugged in and stay humble. And stay willing to do anything that God is asking you to do. I like to tell people that you are not responsible for the harvest. You are responsible for the planting of seeds. And that's what you need to do. And although we are not responsible for the harvest, to be able to have a harvest, you have to plant seeds. So plant those seeds, and just remember that you have 18 years with that child. You have 13 years in homeschooling that child. But you are not going to see the fruit of the labor, all of the fruit of the labor. You're going to see some fruit along the way. But there are many, many areas of that child's life that are not going to bear fruit until they're an adult, because you're planting the seeds now, and God is the one that makes them grow. And He knows each child. He knows each individual. He knows each parent. He knows you. He knows right where you are right now. And He is the one that will get you from point A to point Z and all of the steps in between. So don't give up. Take one day at a time. Don't use today's strength to worry about tomorrow. do your best today and let God do his best. That's all we can do every
Oh,
single day.
excellent encouragement and advice. Thank you, Angela. It's been a blessing, and I look forward to having you back on the podcast in the future. I hope you have a great day, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Israel.
All right, God bless.